Lacey Everett here with Minds in Motion. In order to help others, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free, easy. You can pause this video right now, go click the button, and you're done. If you find this video impacts you, go and send it to others. Today's guest is Rob Balucas, who is a professional paraplegic athlete, currently training for the Kona, which is the full Ironman. Rob is going to talk about an accident that he was in that caused him to be paraplegic and the mental and physical experiences he went through with tips that can relate to anyone. You might also know Rob from his recent TEDx talk from March of this year. Rob's TED Talk is titled, "In Those Moments When You Are Paralyzed by Fear." 1 year after Rob's injury that caused him to be paralyzed from the waist down, he raced in 3 sprint distance triathlons. Since Rob's injury, he has competed in 5 half Ironmans, including the 2019 Half Ironman World Championships in Nice, France. Rob is going to talk to us about how he trains, what it's like for him now, and give us tips on nutrition, motivation, and determination. He has a lot of stories to tell that instill major life lessons in us. Rob is going to talk about how important something as simple as movement is for all of us. He is also going to share the best mental health tips that he has learned from his previous traumas. Rob is truly thriving and so inspirational. So I am looking forward for all of you to hear what he has to say. Let's go meet Rob. Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Hi, look at you working out right now. This is phenomenal.
Ironman training is crazy. You have to be able to multitask or, schedule in, because I'll be here for the next hour and 45 minutes.
This is great. I am loving this. It's like killing 2 birds in 1 stone. Interviews, you can get all your stuff done while you're exercising. Talk about motivation. This is great. With that, I wanted to talk about your story, Rob, because it's very touching, uplifting. There's a lot of things that I'm sure you've learned from and that you can share with others.
Sure. Yeah, I was training for my first half Ironman, and I was in a section of Marin, north of San Francisco, where I lived at the time, on a very infamous road. I was on a 45-mile ride, and mile 40 I was going downhill into a steep turn not a steep turn, it was downhill, but it was a sharp turn, and I was going too fast. Just a momentary lapse. I wasn't trying to bomb the hill and go really fast. It just literally one of those, like, I'm usually a very diligent rider, but momentary lapse, and I realized I was going too fast in this turn. I lost control of my bike and couldn't recover in time for the next turn, and watched the double yellow lines kind of go that way. And I went straight over the side, and I was like, I'm going over the side of this hill. And and I was, I fell 20 feet and landed flat on my back. I think I did somewhat of a, like, head over heels, and just, departed from my bike and landed flat on my back, which makes a lot of sense because I didn't have any road rash from rolling or anything. I just I don't think I was out that long, but I knew I had a broken collarbone, and it was all on my left side. I knew I had a broken collarbone, but my feet were super tingly, and I was trying to reach for my phone in my back pocket, and I couldn't reach it, and I realized I probably just shouldn't move. And some cyclists who were going uphill, they saw me immediately when I called out to them. They came bolting down. It turns out my phone was like 4 feet above my head, and my friends who were with me on the ride were calling, wondering where I was, because I was in front of them. And we were 5 miles from being done. And they, they got to they got to the parking lot and they were like, where is he? And yeah. And so then the fire engines came out and the shit, everything came out, and they inspected me and they put me in the ambulance, and the paramedic was like, hey, you'll be out there and back out in a month, you'll be good. And when we were in the ER, every MRI and CAT scan and X-ray that came back, I had a new problem. I had not only a broken collarbone, but I cracked most of my ribs on this side. This lung collapsed, my left lung collapsed, and I had a L1 burst fracture, which is really rare for someone who was like as dense as I was, which is much training and how fit I was. But it made sense that like a hard impact it's literally called a L1 burst vertebrae because it exploded into like 3 pieces.
Oh gosh. Self-explanatory with the word burst.
Yeah, pretty intense. Yeah, so they laid me on my stomach the next morning and for 6 or 7 hours and put my spine back together and grafted some bone from other places and did all that. I joke, before I went in, I had all my specialists surrounding me before I went to the surgical room, and they all had their bit to say. And I said, which one of you, any questions? I said, well, which one of you is a nutritionist? Okay, how soon can I eat after my surgery? And she goes, you immediately if you want, but I don't think you're going to want to. And I go, believe me, I'm going to want to. Somebody write down milkshake. And I woke up in recovery and I was like, give me my milkshake. And my friend, it went out on social media and all my friends, I got like 14 milkshakes in the next 7 days. And
oh, that's hilarious.
It was amazing and constipating, but we'll save that for another conversation.
It seems like you really kind of took the situation for what it was and kind of realized, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. Give me a milkshake. I'm going to make some kind of like joyous moment of this horrible circumstance.
Yeah, it's kind of like I just stayed in the moment. It's funny. I've never really I've honestly never thought of it this way before, but like, in my own, like, I guess mindfulness practice, if you want to call it that, like I was just in the moment. It's like, at the time I could still feel my feet. I didn't know what to expect. No one told me you're never going to walk again. It was just, just one step at a time, like one day at a time. Surgeries today, it was fast. It's like, you get hurt at, I don't know, 3:00 in the afternoon. And then they're like, hey, you're going to go into surgery starting at 7 a.m. the next morning. It's just like, okay, just staying present with like, what's the next hurdle? What's the next step?
Which I think served you well, would you say? I'm a huge mindfulness fan, researcher, all the things mindfulness. Yeah. So I love that you did that and you had that stay in the present moment type of mindset with it.
Yeah, I always say that I prepaid the therapy, if you will, and a lot of like, I read a lot. I did a lot of seminar type work, personal growth work that for 10 years, and even I'll be the first to make fun of it, and at times wonder if I was just wasting a lot of money on crackpot schemes. And this experience like made every penny worth it.
Wow.
It validated everything I had learned, all the tools that I spent 10 years kind of learning and studying and being challenged with. They just oozed out of me as this, from that day forward. Not to say I'm perfect and I don't have horrible days, but like my ability to cope and just things like that, like staying in the moment in those first few days. It was, it's like I knew what to do.
Wow, it's like you were prepared almost without realizing that would happen. Because like you said in your TED Talk, these things are going to happen. We don't know what life is going to throw at us. We don't know.
Yeah, which I would say like I highly recommend. Now I'm like, okay, like, you got to pay attention to like think about how you think and, how you react to things and what triggers you and all that. All that kind of stuff. Like it just, it all works out when you study those things about, it's like thinking about your thoughts,
Yes, your thought distortions that happen, like I'm not good enough. What if this happens? What if this? What if thinking? And regulating your emotions, it sounds like you did, distress tolerance, like you were in this moment of distress and you were able to tolerate it really well. And it sounds like through your mindfulness practices throughout life, because it gave you a lot of helpful skills and you translated that to that moment.
And it came through, you know, I won't spoil the TED Talk, but it came through, you know, I've been through challenges before, like what I thought was life, you know, like not the end of my life, but just, you know, like craziest trauma for me in a business sense. And, you know, I had already gone through it and I'd already wasted the time. You know, I'd already wasted the time, you know, reacting to a circumstance that I'll say I regret, you know, that because it was just a grand waste of a good chunk of my years. And so when this came along, I was like, I can't do that again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. It's like we live and we learn. That's what happened to you, it seems like, for sure. After after your surgeries and such, how did you get back going? Now you're a hand cyclist. You never really stopped. The motivation in you is absolutely inspiring, Rob.
Well, and it came from all that. It was born from, you know, I already knew what it looked like to sit and wallow in my pain and suffering. And so I was just like, I don't know, you know, what's next. I might walk again. I might not. And you know, like I'm running out of time. Like I know, like it's again one of those things. Like I learned, it's like I know that walking isn't the end of me, you know. And I've had so many reincarnations of me as this and that, like triathlete, you know, like now it's like, okay, Rob's a para-triathlete. And even before then, all my friends were like, oh, you're a triathlete. I'm like, no, I was a guy who was in corporate America. I was getting too fat. And I decided to challenge myself with a triathlon in Malibu to chase J-Lo and Terry Hatcher around. Because that's where the stars do their first triathlon, you know, and so I trained like swimming in the basement pool of a 24-hour fitness, you know, in the East Bay of San Francisco, and did spin class and then ran around my neighborhood and couldn't stop, or I couldn't run a full mile before having to walk a little bit, you know. But I went out and I did it. I crossed the finish line. I, you know, wasn't great, but I crossed the finish line and I sucked so bad that I was like, okay, I gotta go do this again.
Okay.
And now it just became, you know, it became a way for me to stay fit, but it also just gave me an outlet for energy. You know, if I have a bad day or a frustrating day, I can put it into the pool. You know, you know, and the flip side, if I'm not, I can put it into the pool, but also the endorphins of just, you know, working out, endurance workout. It's like, that stuff's true.
Yeah, that stuff is true. I love that. Yes, I agree. I can vouch for that. It's interesting that you started because you noticed you were getting overweight and you go, hey, I want to be healthy and fit and happy. And so this happened and now you're addicted to it. You know, it kind of like served you so well. It seems like that you can't not have it.
Yeah. And there's so many allegories for life in triathlon. It's awesome. Like triathlon, for the vast majority, 95% of people who are on the course, it's not about winning. You know, it's about beating yesterday or crossing a finish line for the first time. You know, it's about doing the best you can do, you know, not against anybody else really. And that's what I kind of love about it. I used to play basketball, and as I got my, you know, as my back started giving out, you know, before I was in a wheelchair, obviously, but like as I was turning like into my 30s, I think, you know, mid 30s, I started, it was too painful to play basketball. And so I turned to triathlon, and it's a very individual, you know, it's one of those individual sports. It's just like, it's not about beating another team and all that kind of stuff. It's about how can you be better than you did the last.
Yes. And that's how it really should always be in any sport, whether you're a dancer on a dance team or a football player, it should really be, you're your own competitor, you know?
Yeah. It's like the John Wooden quote that's like, he never coaches his players to win. He coaches them to be the best that they could be. And, you know, it's like, as I get only as I get older and hopefully wiser, it's like that makes so much more sense. You know,
It does. It makes more sense. And in turn, it will end up making them win because they're focused on themselves instead of comparing to others.
Yeah.
They have that, they grow that mindfulness within themselves, and then they eventually win. So I can totally see how that's true. And also, Rob, I wanted to ask you, how did you mentally go through that? And what are some tips that you would have for others, whether they're in a wheelchair or not, like going mentally through that? Because it would make sense that you felt sad, defeated, all of the above, because you were used to walking and now you're not. And obviously now you're thriving. So I'm just curious what you are. I'm just curious what it was like for you mentally.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's when you ask about advice, I think about a lot of things. I mean, I hate things that sound, you know, played or trite, but like, you know, surrounding yourself with good people, you know, and being one yourself, like having something. Not my mom, but someone used to say, you know, it's, you know, instead of trying to be interesting, you know, be interested, you know, like how can you give and create that kind of, give and take and with, you know, with good people. Like when I crashed, I was in a triathlon club that immediately came to my side and amazed. I mean, I never ate hospital food because they would always go on like a Whole Foods run or whatever was supermarket was close to whatever facility I was in for 3 months. And the nutritionist would come by and be like, "Hey, are you eating? Because you're not ordering from the hospital food, you know?" And, but like, I always felt like I was one of those people who, you know, gave until they bled. And many times in my life, I always wondered, you know, like, am I just being a sucker? You know, like, am I being a moron? And in this time when I needed people the most, they came through in amazing ways. People from high school, people from college, people from my San Francisco community, people from everywhere in my life, like came out of the woodwork to support, you know, my back to triathlon journey and everywhere else, because it validated, not my fears, but it validated the opposite of those fears, that like, you know, surrounding yourself with the right people and investing in them, you know, with no certain return, will kind of like, it'll karmically come back to you. And, you know, and that's, and I see, because I see that with other people I was in rehab and whatnot, who didn't have a lot of people. You know, it's a hard mirror. I'll just say that it's a very hard mirror to have to look into. Growing up, my sport was karate. And, one of my favorite stories that he would tell us, he was like a tall white Mr. Miyagi for me. And he told the story of his two grandmothers. There's one who had an amazing outlook on the world. And, you know, she'd come give Grammy a hug and a kiss and, you know, slips him a 5, don't tell mom and dad kind of grandma, you know, and he always wanted to go see her. And the other one was just kind of negative. Like the world was always happening to her. It was always complaining about how bad things were. And it was tough to go see her, you know, as a child. And of course, that one died first, and he carried the casket and he didn't shed a tear. And he goes, you know, I was actually hopeful that she was in a better place. And then, you know, when the other one passed away, the happy grandma with the $5, when she passed away, he carried the casket and cried like a baby. And I just saw him before the pandemic in like 2019. And he said, I was verifying this story with him that make sure I got it right. He said, yeah, I would say I still miss her today, you know, and he's 60 something. And he would end that story by telling us kids, like, how do you want to be remembered? You know, who do you want to be in life and how do you want to be remembered? And I feel like this isn't the story that could answer your question I was thinking of when I started.
I'm loving this though. Go run with it. Run with it, Rob. I'm loving this.
but it was, that was imprinted on me as a kid, and so I guess, like, I already said it, but like what was validated in this whole journey is that, like, if you are someone that people want to be around, again, not to say you can't have your bad moments and have them, with people and in front of people, you absolutely should. But, when your energy, is contributing as much as it is, if not more than it is taking, and making emotional bank account deposits and being conscious of doing that. I can only say from my own experience, it sets you up for a really happy life.
It sounds like too, Rob, that your main focus was having a big support system, and it sounded like you didn't even try to have that. There's just good people in this world, and you had good friends, and surrounding yourself with them. And if someone doesn't have that, to seek that out, or if they're not around that, maybe change their environment.
Yeah, well, to be it, it's like if you don't have it, it's it's take a look in the in the mirror and see, like, are you someone who's going to attract the good people? Are you being that friend? Are you being the change? Are you being that friend that that you want? Like, that's what does it. That's what changed a lot for me in my former dating life, for sure. I see it there.
Yes, what you give off is what you will get in return, kind of situation. Yeah. Would you say? Yes, that's amazing advice, truly.
Yeah.
And I'm curious too what your workouts look like. Not your mental workouts, but your physical workouts, because you're doing it right now. Determination to its finest right here.
I'm 60 days out from the Kona Kona World Championships for Ironman. The qualifier. Exciting. I haven't qualified yet. The qualifier is in like 60 or 70 days, whatever. And so after today's Monday, after 5.5 hours split between the pool and this hand cycle, this is my easy recovery ride for an hour and 45 minutes.
Recovery, recovery ride.
This is a recovery ride. And you're actually on a TV in front of me, so I am at the bottom of the barrel of every streaming service there is, because I spend, I think the number is like 12 to 15 hours a week sitting right here. In addition to swimming for 3 hours on the weekends between Saturday and Sunday, and then I'll have to send you a picture you can put up, but I have a race chair over here that's for the run aspect. So I swim with my legs tied together and just swim with my arms. And then this is the bike, the equivalent of the bike. And then the racing wheelchair is the run for the 3 disciplines of triathlon.
Oh my goodness, that's a whole lot. It sounds like, Rob, what you did was you had this acquired condition that came out of life situations, an accident that you described earlier, and you learned how to work with it, and you accepted it for what it is instead of like wishing it away.
Yeah, the word is surrender. Like,
surrender. Okay.
The things you can't control, like, you can either resist and waste energy trying to wish them away, or you can surrender to the fact that it's there and do what you can. I got 2 actually good stories about this. Remind me if I forget. The second one is about driving, but the first one is that when I was in the hospital, like, I was my first half Ironman, my 3rd triathlon of the year was with this training club, and triathlon club was the very next weekend. And so I was in the hospital, I had barely gotten out of bed for a week, and my friends, they took Sharpies to their arms and made tattoos dedicating the race to me and made signs. And so half of them are racing, half of them are cheering, and time to go up in power. I just jumped 5 watts. Gotta go a little harder.
All right. Up in power. Here we go. Yeah. Deep breaths.
I was like, what? Something going to shut off? What's that beeping sound? Oh no, I have to pedal hard. So So they did the race, and they made signs and all that stuff, and they sent me texts and all that throughout the day. And it actually pissed me off. When you've worked most of the year, 6 months, to do something, and then you don't get to do it. It's that I wouldn't call it addiction, but it's just like I want to be out there. And I said,
Yeah,
you know
it's
what,
heartbreaking.
I'm gonna be out there next year. And again, no one told me I wasn't gonna be walking, and so I was like, I'm gonna do it next year. I mean, whatever it takes, and that's my jam. Like I'm gonna keep moving, and and it took after I don't know, a week or two. It was like, okay, I might not be walking next year. So what does wheelchair triathlon look like? And I Googled it, and I saw a grainy picture of this guy in a racing wheelchair, and I'm like, fantastic. So this goes back to like, the personal growth work I had done before. It's like, okay, someone's had my problem before, so all I need to do is do what they did at minimum. And so I had a model, and I found out this guy's name is Carlos Moleda. He's like a 5-time Ironman world champion, a Navy SEAL guy in a wheelchair. And so I just started Googling, okay, so this is what a hand cycle looks like. This is what a racing wheelchair looks like. And this is, this is what it costs, which was a lot. And, I started just planning because I got nothing better to do, like pause on that story. One of the ways I look at the journey was that, as you're going down the road, there's these potholes, rabbit holes that are very deep, and I can go all the way down to that despair, but I already know what's at the end of that. At the bottom of that tunnel, of that hole, is nothing. There is no answer as to why this happened to me. Like that question, it's just a rabbit hole with nothing. There's no payoff at the end. It's like the only thing you can do when you get to the bottom is not get an answer, and then figure out how to dig yourself out emotionally. So as I was in the hospital, it was like, I know these things. Like I've been here, psychologically been in this place of despair, or whatever you want to call it, challenge before. And again, like, because I had psychological trauma of a sort before.
Yes.
I knew that, like, there's nothing down there. Like if I need to cry, I'll cry, but I just don't. I don't feel like it. I want to figure out how to do this triathlon. So, ironically, that man Carlos Moleda is now my coach.
What?
and his coach. Yeah, like I met him. He was I got invited to like serendipitously, a woman that I trained with in my training club worked for a board member of the Challenge Athlete Foundation, and they took me to a paratriathlon camp, and he was one of the coaches, and and I got to meet him, and he's a big dog in the paratriathlon world, and now he's one of my two coaches in this, well, three coaches now in this realm. So the point is that I set a goal to do a triathlon next year. I was like, okay, so, and as I think as reality set in week by week, I got, okay, then I'm how do wheelchair people do it? And so I figured it out, and I did like 3 short sprint triathlons that next year. All the ones that I would have done, and payoff and what it was, and cross the finish line and all that. I was like, I went into winter that year. I was like, I came out in January, and I thought, I think I went through a little bit of depression because I just accomplished everything and then just didn't set any more goals. So I set more goals, and I was like, well, not the Ironman World Championships. There's like 6 slots, I think. And some years there's a lot of people, and some years there's not. And I could go to Kona.
Yeah.
I want to add that. I want that in my resume.
Yes. Wow, that's a really phenomenal story, Rob, truly. And 2, it sounds like you had this level of determination already instilled in you that really allowed you to thrive with the condition that you had. And okay, well, I'm going to start researching this. I'm going to start researching that. What does it look like to race in a wheelchair? And now we're here sitting with you, working out. You've accomplished so much. It's insane.
I mean, yeah, when I got hurt, I was 38. And so, I had just come out of like, another, again, like just business loss trauma. And I'd already wasted time. I was like, I'm not going to waste more time. I had created so much momentum that year to dig myself out of that hole. I was like, I'm not stopping. Like this year's been phenomenal. Like, yeah, this year's been phenomenal. And like, there's like, I know there's like a level of activity or energy to put out to like, stay in that pocket. And I was like, I'd rather be there. I'd rather be there than lose another few more years that no one would argue with me about to wallow.
Yes, it's kind of like you thought, okay, life's too short. I'm not going to sit here in despair in my own thoughts. And I love that reference that you said, going down that rabbit hole, because at the end you find there's absolutely nothing. And then you find that because you went all the way down, you're only trying to rebuild yourself to get yourself out of it, which is a lot of work. And so it's really through that, I think that's really wonderful advice for sure.
Yeah. Well, and the car one I was going to tell you is that
yes.
I moved back home with my parents after I got hurt. And again, I'm 38 going, I promised myself I'd never move home to Fresno. Granted, these were, very exceptional circumstances.
Yes.
I was there, and for me, like one of the roadblocks I did hit was like, I had this association that if I learned how to drive with hand controls, I was giving up on the hope that I might walk again.
Oh.
And so, I'm sitting there with my parents and, who I haven't lived with since I was 17. And, started to like really get on each other's nerves. I need to get out of this house. I need to, figure it out. And I had to kind of just sit there one day and go, can I learn to drive with hand controls and still have hope, to walk again someday? It's like, yeah, like functionally beyond, outside of my brain, is there anything that stops those two things from coexisting? I'm like, no, it's just me. So I have to like, if it's just me, well then I have to, like I'll surrender. It's like, if I'm the dummy holding me back, then when I find myself in that spot, I'm like, okay, dude, like get with it. And so I did. So I learned to drive. I got the heck out of the house. I was far more happier, and my parents were as well, that I could just get out, of my own accord. And I always think of that as one of those funny things. Like, what are those funny things your mind does in certain situations that aren't exactly rational, and that was one for me that was like, I'm sitting here miserable and making my parents miserable because like, I think this is what's going to make me walk again. Like, it's 100% not true.
Wow. And how important that is for you to have noticed that in the first place. I mean, that seems like that's the crucial part. And you noticed it, and then you realize, okay, let's change now. And let's do something else. And you realize that irrational. You had all the kinds of distorted thoughts going on with it.
Yeah. And the moment I got my own car with like a pair of hand controls from Amazon, and, almost hit every car on my parents' block, and on the way to Starbucks, I've been getting to Starbucks and realizing I forgot my wallet. I'm like, this is living. This is living. Laying on the couch at my parents' house, not living.
That is awesome. I love that story. I really do, Rob. That was awesome. And two, speaking of driving and hand cycling and moving in general, I wanted to talk about how important something as simple as moving is.
Really ironic is, I mean, gosh, I always want to tell you these elaborate stories, but I'll tell you this. So my mom is, God bless her soul. Hopefully she doesn't see this, but I know she will. She's a she's a bit of a hypochondriac. So when I was a kid, if there was a flu running through the office, she would inevitably get it. And she'd tell herself she'd get it, and she'd get it. And my sensei always instilled in me. He's like, I tell myself I'm not sick, and I don't get sick, and that might be a little far-fetched for some, but like for me, it's like, I live in the same house. I'm the only person in the house with my mom, and I never pick up what she brings home. So how does that work? And now I forget where I was going with that, but though I
Kind
know what
of
it was.
like the mind over matter kind of,
There was, so
like
yeah, and
you
the same thing
are
of
what you
like,
believe.
yeah, there was a guy who I met later in life, who, like, he was a track star at University of Oregon, and he was he was offered basically the chance to become like one of the first pro wakeboarders before it was a thing, and it was a big deal to quit school, quit this track team, and move to Florida. And he said, I had these pangs and my pain in my stomach as I was like going for it, and it scared me, but I kept going. And he's like one of the names in, like of the like foundational pro wakeboarders, or first pro wakeboarders out there, and started a sport, basically a pro sport. And what it said to me is, in my family, what I was brought up with was like, if you feel pain, you should rest. You should just rest. If you're not feeling good, you should rest. And for him, it was like push through. He's like, I learned that pain meant, there's something exciting on the other side. So for him, it was a signal to keep going. And I was like, wow, that's not how I was raised whatsoever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you learn that with triathlon. It's like, you can feel, I got this morning, I woke up, if I woke up back then, how I felt this morning after swimming all weekend, I'd stay in bed, but me, I knew I just need to get up, move the joints and stretch. But now in this situation, I actually have chronic pain. Like, I can show it to you here. It's like from here, it feels like this is above my injury level, that first vertebrae, but from like 2 inches above my belly button, it feels like I have a corset on, and someone's just pulling it as tight as they can constantly. And everything below that, down to my toes, feels like it's on fire. It's like, that feeling when your arm falls asleep because you slept on it. Times that by about 1,000. And
I can't imagine.
That's what I feel like in this moment, in most moments. And what's interesting is that when I'm still, going back to that analogy, the only thing in my brain is the ceiling and this pain, and it hurts, but when I'm here in my hand cycle, like, I have, the motion that I'm doing. I have I have a bike computer right here that tells me how many watts I'm doing. So keeping that consistent. And then whatever I'm watching on TV or talking to you right now. So now that pain, and there's like neighbors maybe walking their dogs over there, and it's a beautiful day, and I have 8 to 10 other things stacked on top of that pain that just pulls it out of my, it pulls it out of my consciousness, so to speak. And that's that's where I'm like, I know that doing this, even when I didn't feel like it before I started, will always benefit me. Like, I had this equation before I was hurt that was like, working out in the morning, I am, the proverbial fat kid at heart. Like, I wake up in the morning, I don't want to go work out. I never wake up and go, oh, I want to go work out. But like, I know there's like this flow chart. It's like, I know I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to work out. But if I don't go work out, I'm going to hate myself for not doing it. So now I've stacked, like, I don't want to do it. And then I didn't do it. Now I'm hurting, I'm stacking things against myself. But if I wake up, don't want to do it, and then I go do it, I feel good about the fact that I did it, and I feel better having done it. Like, that always works out. It never works out where it goes, I woke up, I didn't want to do it, I went and worked out, and I regretted working out. Like, that equation is never the thing, at the end. So like, I have to, like, in my brain, I'm like, when I wake up, I'm like, okay, I know if I move, like, I'm going to love it. I'm going to be, if I don't move, not only will I suffer more because I didn't move, but I also hate myself more for making that choice, especially when I knew this equation.
Yes, the equation. I like how you related it to a flow chart and an equation, because it sounds like it's just what happens. Like, it's clockwork with you, with the mornings and getting on with the workouts. And two, it sounds like, Rob, it's a great tip for others who don't want to work out, who have the upbringing you did.
Where fat child at heart, or just fat kid at heart, who just, or whatever. My partner, my girlfriend, she has that habit. She's a machine. She wakes up, treadmill, like she's on it, or she's on the road. But me, I'm like, man, I'm every morning I go like, okay, I have to go through that. A, B, A plus B equals C. A plus D does not equal A.
Yes.
My brain.
And yes, Rob. And you know what, too? I think both of them are equally as okay. Both of them, the machine, wake up, treadmill, or going through the equation in the morning, because both get you there. And we're not the same as our girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it may be. We're not the same. Our body chemistries, our internalizations of life are different. So it makes sense that it'd be different for you and other people to get to work out. But it sounds like the tip of kind of thinking about how would you feel if you didn't?
Yeah.
And think about that feeling. And then that seems like it gets you to work out.
My favorite one is donuts. So like donuts are my favorite, right? So
I love donuts.
I mean, who doesn't? If you didn't,
what's your favorite donut? I'm curious.
The apple fritter. Have a nice day.
Oh, apple fritters. Yes.
No, go ahead.
I like the old-fashioned donuts. I'm an old-fashioned donut person. Apple fritters are great.
I was going to say, the apple maple bacon, currant, that one's great too. But the classic apple fritter. But I have this like analogy of that same thing of like when I lived in San Francisco, I lived near, you walk everywhere, and there's a great little old school, donut shop down the street, and it's like they just be like, I'm walking down the street. When I first moved to San Francisco, it's like, you walk by, I'm getting a donut. So I'm walking down the street where the donut shop is. That's just how it works. And and then it, like, after it was over, sugar rush and pain and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, oh, I regret this decision. And then and then there's a moment where I need to stop eating donuts. I need to stop doing this. I go by the shop. I'm like, I need to stop doing this, but I'm gonna go do it anyway. So I go do it, and I'm like, I pay the price. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. And sugar rush, and now I'm crashing, and this is bad. And then there's a day where I'm like, donut shop. I'm like, but I know that if I do that, I'm gonna pay the price. And so like, don't go to the donut shop. And then eventually, it turned into like donut shop. And then it turned into, didn't think about the donut shop.
Ooh.
And then, and it just, as time went on, it's like the more, it took me time to build that discipline not to go to the donut shop. And then every now and then when I, dived in, sugar high, sugar crash, I regret that decision. Why did I do that? But, it had to be done. It was Sunday.
It was Sunday, yes. And
whatever.
Yeah, whatever. In moderation, we're fine. Yeah. A really interesting point, because that can translate to a lot of things in life. It sounds like you taught your brain that, okay, if I'm going to have a different mindset towards this, or if I'm going to notice how I feel if I do X, Y, and Z, then it helps you to not do the quote unquote bad thing. Like if I notice how I'm going to feel if I don't work out, that's not a good feeling. So I'm going to work out. If I notice how I feel when I eat all those donuts, that's not a good feeling. So I'm not going to eat the donuts. And over time, obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but over time, it seems like it really helped you.
Yeah. It's like whoever taught me discipline is that idea of like, you make choices and you pay consequences, and not everything's a negative consequence. However, it's like, if you done did it and you did know better, then you done got what you did.
Yes.
And it is so like there's days. So when you kind of think that way, it's like, all right, if I go to the end of this game, like what the outcome is. Yeah, do I want that outcome? I don't know. I just did it with cheese and beer the other weekend, and I lost my brain. I lost a day and a half because I was I was lost, and it wasn't worth it. Kinda,
Kinda, yeah.
But I'm also in that zone. I'm also in that zone of like I could have eaten just half as much cheese and been just as fine and had a day and a half. And that's it's still a reoccurring issue.
Yes, But we over time, patience is a virtue, I guess, with these things. Rob, this was really wonderful, truly. I'm seriously
Yeah.
gonna say you are so inspirational and you're hilarious. And you have all the great tips and tricks. Truly. I'm so grateful.
No, I really appreciate you inviting me and being able to tell all these stories.
Yes, and I wish you the best of luck for your
Thank you.
qualifications because it will happen. I'm putting it out there right now. Mind over matter. It will
Yes.
happen.
Keep pedaling.
Yes, keep pedaling. Well, take care.
Yeah, thank you again.
All right. Bye.
Bye.